Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, along with Rick Curti. Good evening, Mr. Curti.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing all right. The weekend's behind us. We've got a very ambitious broadcast schedule this week, and you and I get to talk about competitive sports. And we're going to start with mixed martial arts, UFC 249, which actually broke the sports drought by having their promotion on Saturday night. What are your thoughts about UFC taking place out in Jacksonville over the weekend?
I thought it was a big mistake. I think we're way too early for sports, and that's a very contact sport. They're right next to each other. I know they did it in a stadium where there's no people, but I'm not a fan of them having it or having any sports right now till we can contain this thing that just seems like it's just not going to go away anytime soon. So I'm not a big fan of MMA. I'm not really into it. I wouldn't have watched it anyway, but I just think it's too early to have sports right now at this time.
Well, I can appreciate, that Dana White was on a mission to go ahead and get UFC 249 going. I mean, he took it on the chin a few weeks ago when he wanted to do it, but ESPN obviously put the kibosh on it because they weren't ready to do it in California.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's just really risky right now, and hopefully everybody will be safe and stuff like that. And I know they had a big old upset with Ferguson losing, and so I'm sure people were happy to see it. I know people who are not into it were happy to see some type of sports. Like I said, I'm more on the side of precaution and safety and all that stuff like that. So I think it's just too early to have that, but that's just my opinion on it.
Well, no, and I can appreciate that. I'm sure you're not the only one that feels that way. At what point, though, do you feel will be the right time to have any kind of sports? I know now I think we're about 2 months into this drought, and we're having to deal with every single resource to get this bad boy going. And is there any particular sport that you think right now that wouldn't be too early?
Probably like maybe golf, because they play by themselves or they're there with their caddy and they walk around a lot, and they're not close to each other, but you have to have it without anyone in the gallery. So I can see them doing golf, because it's such a sport where you're alone and it's spread out, and you're not next to your opponent and just you and your caddy. So I can kind of see golf doing something with it, but like contact sports like basketball or even baseball or even MMA or even maybe boxing, I just don't see that really right now in the future.
Well, it's funny how you say that, Rick, because over the weekend I was really desperately looking for something. So, I got to tell you, in your neck of the woods, they had cornhole. What do you know about cornhole?
Yeah, it's real popular out where I'm from.
Yeah, well, evidently it is, Rick. I mean, think about it. They did this thing in Rock Hill, South Carolina, man. Talk to me about cornhole.
Yeah, I mean, it's popular there. We actually have sometimes one of the big things I've been seeing, and they've been popping up a lot of these places where you can throw axes. We have a couple here in Charlotte where you literally get an axe and you throw it. And I've seen some other places in other states that have it too. So I guess cornhole, maybe axe throwing, I guess that's going to be the big ones. But yeah, cornhole or maybe bowling. I think I can see maybe them having bowling as long as it's in an empty place and it's just a bowler and just his ball. So I mean, I can kind of see bowling, but other sports, I think it's just too risky right now.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how you talk about bowling, Rick, because it's these auxiliary sports, if I may use the term loosely, Rick, about bowling, golf, that would get a lot more publicity because of the thirst that everybody really, really, really wants. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're able to capitalize on the publicity that they ordinarily wouldn't get. So,
I mean, I think those two sports really desperately need some type of attention, and I think as long as they can abide by the rules and they would have to do it without anybody sitting in the stands or sitting in the areas, and it was just them. I think they could do really well during this whole pandemic because people would tune in and say, well, at least we got golf and at least we got bowling. It's better than nothing. So I can see people really tuning into that.
Well, I mean, you're obviously in the Carolinas. Oh, you have NASCAR coming back. What are your thoughts about NASCAR coming back later in the month?
Yeah, I'm not really thrilled about that either. We're having the Coca-Cola race actually on my birthday, Labor Day weekend, and I was kind of surprised the governor was okay with it. They said they're not going to have anybody in the stands, but I mean, you got everybody. You got race car drivers, you got the sponsors, you got the pit crew, you got all these people that are right next to each other, and to me, I just think it's a bad idea. I think it's way too soon. You're going to get people, who can get infected or get people exposed to it. And, this thing likes big groups of people, likes large crowds, and that's where it feeds and that's where it gets hungry. So I just think it's way, way too soon for NASCAR to be racing, especially this month. That's going to be happening on Labor Day weekend.
So let me ask you, do you understand cornhole at all? I mean, I don't even know how you score it or anything. Come on, educate me, being out in Carolina, about a sport I don't know anything about. This almost kind of reminds me of curling and all, where I don't know nothing about it. I know a lot about sports, but not even curling either.
All I know about cornhole is that you just have like a little hacky sack and you throw it and you try to make it in the hole. I have no idea how you score it. I don't know how you do it. I've seen it. There's some restaurants out here that had cornhole while they were waiting for your table. It was pretty interesting, but I don't know how to score it. All I know is the object of the game is you get the little hacky sack and you try to throw it in the hole. So I guess it'd be like bowling, I guess. I have no idea.
Well, I got to tell you a funny story many, many years ago. I'm sure our listeners will really get a kick out of this. I once won a trophy in college for in bowling for most unusual form. So, yeah, it's
well, there
real.
you go.
Yeah, my Uncle Sam out there in Cape Coral, my late Uncle Sam, tried to teach me to bowl the right way, and he really worked hard to go out there. So, for me, it's just I couldn't get it, so I just went back to my off-the-wall way. And I got to tell you a funny story back in Detroit when I was covering the Bad Boys, and I actually I did bowling with Dennis Rodman, and, I'll tell you, Dennis Rodman and I became really good friends, and I ended up going ahead and we did a 2 out of 3. We played like 2 games. That was before all the attention was there. And Dennis said, man, your form is kind of strange here. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Dennis, okay, why don't we go ahead and do this? Your free throw shooting isn't very good either, so let's go out there and have some fun with it. And Dennis had one of the best sense of humors I've ever seen, Rick. He really, really, really did. So I ended up beating him the second game, and, I said, if I lose, you lose, or whatever, I'd pay for your game and vice versa. So in the final game, and I did win the second game, even though I won ugly. But Dennis Rodman's sense of humor is better than most people really do it. And I made a lot of good relationships too, Rick, covering the Bad Boys. I really did, and that was pretty neat stuff. So, all right, let's talk about, who do you think will be next, though, in terms of taking advantage of what appears to be a gentle opening? Can you predict what sports are going to get going aggressively, Rick?
The only ones I can see is golf or maybe bowling. I really don't see I think basketball season's done. I don't know why they're opening up these practices and risking players' safety and health to have practices when the NBA hasn't even decided whether they're going to have a season or not, which I believe it's done with. And baseball, I know the owners came up with a proposal. I just see a lot of pushback from the players and them not wanting to do that. Football, I don't think we're going to have a football season at all, to be quite honest with you. So the only sport I can kind of see is really golf, since it's a sport that you're by yourself. So I think it's going to be a while, but I think you're going to have people who or just players going to just are not going to do it. I don't think they want to travel. They don't want to put their safety on the line. And you're dealing with people who are multimillionaires who can take off a year or two. So I think it's going to be quite a while since we see sports.
Yeah, I think so too. It's such a tricky situation, Rick. It really, really, really is. I mean, we've heard so many different plans of action, but nothing's been concrete. And, let's say you start a baseball season in July, and all of a sudden, heaven forbid, something takes place and everything you did went down the drain, and all of a sudden, there's no sense of being able to know when you can really restart it at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think if baseball season does start the 4th of July and they get like one or two players that come down, test positive, that's it for the baseball season. So that's going to be the problem, is that you're going to have people that test positive for it. I mean, football season hasn't even started yet, and Von Miller is the first one that we know of the NFL players that tested positive for COVID-19. So I agree, it's a tricky situation, and they want to go with it, and then they kind of say, well, no, this happened or that happened, or it looks like it looks good, and then all of a sudden we'll have a couple of days where the numbers went up. So it is very, very tricky and very, very difficult to assess. You
talk about a fragile situation. Boy, is that ever it or what?
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, it's just you don't know what to do, because you can see both sides. Like, I want to see sports, but at the same time, I don't want to see people get sick or potentially die. But I want to see sports, but it has to be a safe way, and it has to be like a smart way, and just rushing it out. I see some states, or even like some people just want to rush it out there and get it out there, and it's just too risky. Just like the MMA fighting, I just think it's just too much risk there and less reward for me. But that's just my opinion on that.
Well, in terms of NCAA football, Mark Emmert's really come out, and a lot of people have said he's talked to presidents and so forth, that really to have a college NCAA football season without fans would almost really be counterproductive.
Yeah, I mean, they rely on the fans and the ticket gating and stuff like that, and you got these small colleges that don't have that, get those millions and millions of dollars. So that's where it's going to hurt. So having a stadium, with empty fans, whether it's college or pro sports, just really doesn't make any sense.
No, it really doesn't. So we talked about boxing a little bit. So let's get into it now. I know you say that's one sport you don't think should come back, but it's inevitable. I think at some point it really will too. The question is when. So why don't you give me, in your opinion, why boxing shouldn't come back? I've always had the thing where, the gloves could be the biggest potential transmission of anything that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Like I was talking about the MMA. I think it's just too much risk there and less reward. It's a very contact sport. They're going to be like on top of each other, and you got sweat, you got blood. They're going to have it in an empty stadium. So right there, they're not going to make any money from the tickets. And so it's just, to me, it's just too much risk, too much reward. And right now, it's just, you just need to wait it out like every other one. And I would love to see boxing. There's a lot of good fights that were going to happen, but this thing is so devastating, and we're on its timetable. It's not on our timetable. That's the frustrating part about all that.
So I know you don't like UFC. Why don't you tell me why you don't really care for that sport very much?
It's just, I'm not into karate. I'm just not into that whole. Right now, it's become like a lot like wrestling, where they come in and they have all these characters, and they have fights during the press conference and stuff like that. To me, when I watch wrestling, I know it's going to be over the top. I know it's going to be crazy and stuff like that. And with MMA, I think it's becoming too much like WWE. And, you just have these characters that come around. I'm just not really into. I'm a big boxing fan. And unfortunately, boxing has deteriorated for quite some time, and MMA has kind of stolen its thunder. And I'm just not really into karate. I'm not really into kickboxing. I'm not really into cage fighting. What they do is just amazing. I could never, ever, ever do. They could pay me $1 million. I'd never get in the ring. And I just think what they do is amazing, and they have to have some kind of guts to get in there. But for me as a fan to watch it, I'm just not really into seeing blood and guts and, blood everywhere and people getting all beaten up to a pulp, and it's just not my thing.
No, I understand. So why don't you give me a reason why you like boxing so much? I'm with you in the same boat, but I want to hear your reasons first.
Well, I think boxing has been around for so long. I mean, you have so many legends. I mean, you had Joe Louis, and then you had Sugar Ray Robinson, and and then you had, I grew up, it was Mike Tyson, and then you had Evander Holyfield, and boxing has been around for so long. And we've had so many great champions: Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman. I go on and on and on. I think because it's had so much more longevity than the MMA, which I remember seeing the first MMA fight. And it was, they didn't even have any weight classes. And I just watched it because, people said it was like banned everywhere. And I was kind of more curious to see it. And it was okay, it was all right. And it's changed so much and it's become so popular. But I just love watching boxing. I miss the heavyweight division. I wish they had a Mike Tyson or a Lennox Lewis or Evander Holyfield. And right now they don't have that person. Maybe Tyson Fury, maybe. I don't know, but I just love it because it's just more science into it. It's just a lot of fun to watch. You get to see these two great fighters who finally going to fight each other. You waited years and years, and there's nothing greater than someone winning the heavyweight championship. So I just think because it's been around so long and you had so many legends in the game, I think that's the reason why I love boxing so much.
Oh, yeah, you're not kidding, Rick. When you talk about the heavyweight division, I've always been a firm believer that without the heavyweight division, that boxing isn't relevant. Don't get me wrong. The other weight classes are fine, middleweights or whatever, and a lot of great fighters came out of those other divisions, such as Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Robinson. The beat goes on and on, but you're right. Anytime you've got Joe Frazier, you have Muhammad Ali, even George Foreman for a while, and the list goes on and on, and Joe Louis. There's nothing that really tops boxing. And MMA, I've always viewed it as a human version of cockfighting, is what I look at it as. Mm-hmm. And if you've seen anything with cockfighting with birds in cages, oh my goodness. I mean, it's too visual to really want to go out there and talk about. It just, to me, just doesn't get it done. So, but yeah, right now, to me, UFC is nothing more than just a fad, is really what it is. Until they can come up with 100 matches, and we'll find out whether or not Dana White is around to go ahead and have UFC, 1,000. But, I got to give Dana White credit. I love his persistence for sure. I really do.
Yeah. Oh, man, he's done a great job. He's done a great job elevating that sport. I had no idea that this thing would grow as big as it was. I remember seeing the first one, and they were just on the ground wrestling each other. There was no weight classes. It was just like barbarian gladiator style fighting. We just went in there, just beat each other to a pulp, and now you got all these weight classes, and it's become so popular. And the boxing has gone down because you don't have those names anymore, like a Tyson, a Holyfield, or a Julio Cesar Chavez, or a Mildred Taylor, or a Sugar Ray Leonard. That you just haven't seen that, and the MMA kind of took advantage of it, and they've had these crazy characters like Conor McGregor and all that.
Right.
And it's just people really like to see blood and guts and violence. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah, well, there's no question about it. We got a few more minutes to go here, Rick. So, we'll talk about the fact that UFC right now has taken it upon themselves to try to get things going. I can only imagine what the pay-per-view numbers were on Saturday. But again, this is one of those situations where a sport like this is able to take advantage of the drought. So, there's a hunger for it in any way. And if UFC is taking advantage of this drought, then I have to say at least more power to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's that was what they wanted to do, and I guess he just felt that it was just time, that they were going to be safe, they were going to be ready, and he knew that people really were craving for sports. And even if you're not a big MMA fan like myself, he's hoping that other people say, you know what, I'm going to watch this because it's better than nothing, and then hopefully they can turn them into fans. I would be very surprised if the pay-per-view numbers were low. I'm sure they were very, very, very high because people had that thirst to see some type of sport, whether it is or not. I saw people on social media saying, I'm going to watch MMA. I'm not a big fan, but at least it's a sport that I can watch because I need to watch some type of sport. So I'm sure the numbers are going to be very, very high for their pay-per-view.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've learned from my ex-wife, Susan, many years ago, that the only pay-per-view event I ever invested was Tyson Holyfield, where he bit his ear off. So, and I didn't need my head getting bitten off by my ex, but I vowed to not go ahead and do any more pay-per-view investments, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So, with that said, we're going to take the last part of the program to let everybody promote what they're going to do. And Rick, you have a lot of ways to go, so I'm going to let you lead it off. All right?
Okay. Well, you can contact me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. I have an email address at cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook. We have a group page called MLB Charlotte. We also have a page called Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. And I'm also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball. And I also have a LinkedIn page under Rick Curti, and you can contact me in any of those venues.
The man is busy. That's what keeps him very, very relevant, right, Rick? You got to have it out there. And you do it really well. Oh, yeah. Those people that don't understand what we do, if they want to get in this business, they better figure it out quick. Just to give you an idea how to contact us. Okay, you are listening to the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, along with my right-hand man, Rick Curti. And to follow us, you can do it on Twitter two ways, Scoop, SCOOP, 33333. Count them up. That equals 5. At Tribune South. You can also like our page on Facebook, the South Florida Tribune. And yes, you guessed it, Instagram. You can follow us there, South Florida Tribune. And we have a YouTube channel. Yes, you guessed it. Once again, South Florida Tribune. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have a lot of great stories through our affiliate columns, our media distribution partners, as well as our contributing writings, in addition to where the broadcast will be found. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. We have some great broadcasts on the network. The Sports Exchange, the one you're listening to right now, South Florida Tribune Podcast, which offers non-sports related material. 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. The Real and the Rare, starring Xavier McKnight and myself. Fantasy Football with myself and Ryan Schoolroot and Motorman and Rude Dog. If you're looking to find these broadcasts, you can do so in the following ways. You can go to Podchaser. You can go to Deezer, at Podcast Addict, CastBox, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, and last but not least, Apple Podcasts. So there's no reason why you can't find us one way or the other. And again, we work very, very hard to make sure that we get it up to the best information we can, both on the air as well. So any closing thoughts, Rick? Just to let people know, following this broadcast, we'll be doing another edition of the Sports Exchange featuring David Levin and Michael Santos, who's definitely heavily into UFC and boxing. So that's why we had this to lead into the broadcast. So any closing thoughts, Rick?
No, just stay safe out there, everybody. Wash your hands and, just do your social distancing and, just use some common sense and please don't take this lightly at all.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than that. And I should also focus that we work very hard at the network to try to find you the best material we can. So if you have a lot of things that you're stressed out about, at least this will be a diversion. And we hope that you listen to the broadcast, like it, download it, and subscribe to it. So on behalf of Rick Curti, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, wishing you a good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Have a good night, folks.